CityCast is brought to you by Wise, the app for international people using money around the globe. With Wise, you can send, spend, and receive up to 40 currencies with only a few simple taps and save up to 55% compared to major banks. Plus, Wise won't add hidden fees to your transfer. Whether you're buying souvenirs with pesos in Puerto Vallarta or sending euros to tip your Coliseum tour guide, you know you're getting a fair exchange rate with no extra markups. Be smart. Join the 15 million customers who choose Wise. Download the Wise app today or visit wise.com. Learn more by visiting wise.com/US/compare. T's and C's apply.
Today on CityCast DC, it is the first day of school for DCPS, and given the continued presence of federal agents in the city, I gotta say, nothing about this back-to-school year feels normal. President Trump is threatening an even tighter crackdown over DC, and some DC State Board of Education representatives are even advocating for students to obtain real IDs for fear that some students may be stopped on the way to school. Amid all of that, today is also the start of a new cell phone policy in schools. Back in June, DCPS announced that they're instituting a bell-to-bell cell phone ban, part of a trend around the country and around the city. One early adopter of the no phones policy was Georgetown Day School in Tenleytown. The head of school, Russell Shaw, wrote an essay in The Atlantic about why they chose to nix phones. He talked with Mike back in June about why and what results they've seen because of it. I've been thinking a lot about this interview that Russell and Mike did in light of this moment we're in where most of the city is glued to our phones. So we're running that conversation again for you now. Today is Monday, August 25th. I'm Annie Reese, and here's what DC is talking about.
Hey, Russell, thank you for being here.
It is my pleasure, Mike.
So, DC Public Schools announced that they will enforce a bell-to-bell cell phone ban policy. You're the head of Georgetown Day School, and you've had that policy for about a year now. Why'd you institute it?
We've had it actually in our lower and middle schools for a few years. We instituted in our high school for a few reasons. One is we have been closely watching all of the research around adolescent mental health and the sort of national rise in anxiety and depression, and the Surgeon General's warning, and have been thinking about what are some of the upstream causes. And one of the things where we have certainly seen correlation is to broad use of cell phones and social media. We also have watched ways in which kids are not engaging in sort of person-to-person community to the same degree that they once were, that a lot of human interactions are being mediated through technology or phones. And we feel like school is a place where community should be at the center, where kids learn how to be in community, how to be in relationship with each other. And we felt like phones were getting in the way of that. And then I guess the third reason is, school is a place where you learn to really pay attention deeply to topics, to new ideas. And we see phones as something that disrupts or fragments attention. And that maybe by pulling that technology out during the school day, kids would be able to have a deeper academic experience.
So I'm curious, and I'm the parent of a couple of kids at GDS, but how have the kids reacted?
So I would say it's a mixed bag. There are students who have said, actually, it's better this year, that they're talking to each other more, that they like that they can go into common places and not see a bunch of kids on their phones. So we have fans. We have some detractors who feel like, we're about to be adults. And as adults, we're going to have access to these devices. And so how are you preparing us for adulthood if you're not giving us access to these? And some who feel like, there's just a convenience that the phone almost becomes an extension of their self, whether it's for ordering food or connecting with friends. And they've had to learn some analog ways of relating to each other in the world. I think that's okay, but not all of them have welcomed that.
Speaking of adults, what about the parents?
Broadly, parents have been super supportive. They feel like anything that we can do to interrupt their kids' dependence on technology and particularly social media is good for kids. There have been a few who have been frustrated by the inability to, reach their child at a moment's notice during the school day. But by and large, the parents have embraced this change.
So what does this look like in reality? People show up. Do they have to put their phones in their lockers? Is there a big bag that you put them in? Do they just, is that honor system and they got to keep them in their pockets?
So it is, schools have adapted a range of different approaches. Ours is often away. And so kids leave their phones in their bags or their pockets during the school day. And if they are out, then, they'll be taken by the end of the day. And there's sort of a progressive series of consequences. And by and large, kids are honoring the ask. And what it means is that, last year in the hallway, if you would walk down the hall, you would see lots of kids looking at their screens. Now, kids are seeing, who's around them. There's a lot more spontaneous interaction. There's a lot more just sort of conversation in common spaces rather than everybody, interacting with their screen.
What do you do if there's an emergency?
You do a range of different things. One is we have an intercom system, and if we need to get a hold of the kids all at once, we would get a hold of them through the intercom system. We can also send out alerts through computers, and, a lot of kids have laptops and they're accessing those. But, it's the same way that we would reach kids pre-phones. We do fire drills. We have a way of, immediately broadcasting a message to the entire high school through our intercom system.
And I mean, if there's an emergency at home, the parent, I guess, just got to reach school the old-fashioned way, call the front office, and someone goes fetch the kid.
Exactly right. And I will say, one can make an argument that sort of ease of access is frustrating to parents. I think that it's actually really healthy for kids. And one of the reasons it's healthy for kids is that if a 10th grader bombs a Spanish test and finds out at 10 in the morning, and they are very upset about that, and the first thing they want to do is text or call their parent and say, this was so unfair, whatever it might be, and have an immediate parental response and engagement. What will happen now is they'll have that experience, and then they'll have the day to sort of process their reaction to that experience and to decide, oh, you know what, I'm going to go see the teacher and see if I can meet them for extra help. Or, you know what, I'm going to talk to a classmate and see if they can help me work on this issue. And by the end of the day, they have realized, you know what, I can actually manage this. And they've built a sense of sort of internal capacity that in many ways is far more important than whatever they were learning on that Spanish test. And so I think slowing down that communication between adolescents and parents during the school day is actually really helpful for kids.
So here's the thing that worried me when I first heard about this policy at GDS. It worries me about it, particularly at DCPS, is the enforcement piece. And particularly when you have like a small thing that's quite easy to hide, like a cell phone. It falls on teachers and administrators to enforce the rules. And in that moment, it's pretty inevitable that human biases creep in. Maybe people wind up feeling like it's the black kids who are getting busted for phones, but not the white kids, or it's the boys who are able to hide them because they have pants with pockets and the girls who aren't. How do you avoid, I mean, and that can have some really toxic effects downstream that damage community in other ways. How do you avoid that?
I think a couple of things. One is, as I've shared, we're in year one of this, and to date, it hasn't created a sort of adversarial adults versus kids relationship. I think a lot of the vast majority of the kids have said, okay, I can be without my phone during the school day, and we're not really playing a cat and mouse game. I think that more broadly, whenever, in terms of enforcement, if that is a real issue, tracking outcomes and saying, how are we actually implementing this? And are there trends that we're seeing by gender, by race, et cetera? So I think that you should always be doing that irrespective of the change.
Has there been so far? I guess there hasn't been any problems with enforcement.
No. And again, do I think that there are kids who are going into the bathroom and pulling out their phone? I absolutely do. Does a child periodically or a high school student periodically forget and pull out their phone to see a text that came in? Absolutely. And, one way, obviously, that some schools have addressed this is they have everybody turning their phones at the beginning of the day or putting them in the yonder bags that lock, and then they can unlock them at the end of the day. We did not choose to go that route. We wanted to sort of do this in a way that empowers kids to actually be sort of partners in this change with us. And broadly, I think it's successful. And I measure that success by going into, as I walk around the high school and observing in common spaces. A year ago, if I saw 60 kids sitting in a big common space, half of them would have been looking down at their screens. And now what I see is far more interaction and conversation. And to me, that's objectively a win.
What if adjusting home comfort winter to summer was as easy as flipping a record? It can be when you plug into an energy-efficient electric heat pump. Side one, warm it up. Ready for side two? Cool it now. Just flip the switch. Your wallet will thank you, the planet too. And right now, get up to $5,000 off from the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, or DCSEU, when you give up gas for an efficient electric heat pump. Income-qualified residents upgrade at no cost. These record rebates won't last. Make the switch today. Visit dcseu.com/electric.
Hey, remember that amazing little cafe you discovered last summer with the perfect latte and the crazy view? Or that sweet hiking spot your friend told you about but you can't remember the name? With Overlook Maps, special places never get lost again. You can create personal lists of places you've been and want to go. Build your must-visit list for your next vacation, your foodie favorites for date nights, or your weekend getaways when you need to escape. Share your favorite hidden gems with friends and family. Let them discover that incredible barbecue joint you found, or that scenic outlook that takes your breath away. Or keep your secret spots completely private. Planning a trip with friends? Create a shared list where everyone can add their ideas. Visiting a new city? Check out lists from locals who know the real gems, not just the tourist traps. And here's the best part. There will be no ads cluttering your lists. No one selling your data to advertisers. Just your personal collection of amazing places organized exactly how you want them. Overlook Maps. Collect, organize, and share the places that matter to you. Download free at overlookmaps.com and check out overlookmaps.com/DC to see some of our lists and great spots on a map in your pocket. Your places, your way.
So I assume that there were conversations like this that took place when you were considering this policy, because they're going on within DCPS now, where there's one argument is why not just ban the phones during class, let kids use them at lunch or before school? Why does it have to be a full ban?
Yeah, I think, this is not merely about what's happening in the classroom. It's what's happening in community. And we really value the kinds of interactions and relationships that get formed in community and see that as one of the central purposes of school. And if technology is interfering with or fragmenting community, how can we sort of cultivate a healthier community and healthier kids?
And I assume this was a conversation too, which is like everywhere in the rest of society. We use phones for everything, for translation, for getting on the metro. And these kids are said to you, well, we're about to be adults. Why not just teach kids how to responsibly use their smartphones rather than just taking them away? What did you say to push back on that?
I mean, I think that, that argument can be applied to all sorts of things. We could have fourth graders who are driving. We could have sixth graders who, we could have an open bar in the middle school. Like we could change all of the guidelines and sort of roll back the age of doing different things.
Right.
I think that for me, part of it is what's the fundamental purpose of school? And I think the purpose of school is deep learning, is being in community, is, developing an authentic sense of self. Number two, it's not as though we are banning phones from our students' lives. We're saying, 8:45 to 3:15. And that means that in the evening, if kids are worried they're not going to get practice interacting with this technology, I think they're getting plenty of practice. It's just they don't need that practice during the school day. We are achieving. And with any change of this nature, you gain some things and you give some things up. But we think that what's being gained here is far greater than what's being given up.
So right, like when Sweden banned cell phones from schools, there was a study in 2020 that said banning them, whatever else it didn't increase test scores. But that sounds to me like that was kind of not your main purpose here.
Correct. I think there are ways in which a child is far more likely to be sort of sitting in the hallway reading a book or having a deep conversation with a friend about something they just learned in class than if they had their phone accessible to them. So I think that you do gain some things on the learning front. But again, that was not the primary driver for us. The two primary drivers were community and mental health.
It's hard to run the timelines differently. But how much of this is the fallout from COVID? You know, kids were home, kids were much more device plugged in, no matter what the rules at their schools had been. And we've learned some stuff about how they learn and how they fare. Did that affect the thinking here?
What I do think is that the isolation during COVID accelerated some of the trends that we were already seeing around mental health. Those trends were there, but they got worse. I think that community and community connections were eroded by people not being together. And so if part of what we're attempting is, a healing process of rebuilding community and reconnecting humans with each other, I think that this is one of any number of steps that we're doing to try to help that healing.
So you wrote about this in The Atlantic. I'm curious, sort of, I know where the zeitgeist is, but where is the research globally about cell phones and their effect on the smartphones and their effect on kids?
There are big arguments happening in the social sciences world about, is this correlation or is this causation? With that being said, the trends around increases in anxiety, increase in depression, increase in suicidal ideation, increase in, self-harm over the past 10 to 15 years are indisputable. If you look at the graphs, they're fairly stark. And what else was happening in the world 10 or 15 years ago? It was everybody began carrying around these personal computers in their pockets and the sort of explosion of social media. So we are not at Georgetown Day School social scientists who are conducting research. We are, trying to cultivate one thriving community. And yet these trends are alarming enough to us that we are willing to try any number of things to raise healthier kids and to build a strong community. This is one of many steps that we're doing to help achieve that important goal.
In your essay, you compared phones to your parents receiving free samples of cigarettes on cafeteria trays in the 60s, which, wow, I assume you don't give those out. A lot of people might hear that as hyperbolic. Do you think it's a fair comparison, cigarettes and phones?
I think that what's fair is that when cigarettes were being given out, there wasn't a lot of sort of longitudinal research around how they impact human beings, which made it seem okay to put them in the hands of high school students. Similarly, I think we are in the early days of trying to understand the cumulative impact of how this technology is sort of rewiring our brains and rewiring humanity and how that's impacting kids. So I fully expect that in 10 or 20 years, we're going to know a lot more. And my guess is that there will be a much fuller understanding of the implications of putting this technology in kids' hands. The other thing that I think is noteworthy is the community that I have found to be sort of the most evangelical about not giving this technology to kids is Silicon Valley. People who live in Silicon Valley are very sort of forward about kids should not have these, and I don't give my child a phone until they're in high school, and we have lots of limitations on screen time, et cetera. So I think that's telling.
I wonder if there's anything you've learned that you would tell as advice to somebody in charge of a school that is instituting a new policy.
So I think to whatever degree, kids may not choose this. And yet, to whatever degree you can bring them in as partners in terms of how we're going to roll it out, how's it going after 3 months, how's it going after 6 months, be in dialogue with kids so they don't just feel like this is something that's happening to them, but that they can be agents within this process. I think that's healthy. I think that wherever you can give adolescents ownership and autonomy, you get better outcomes.
So here's a big picture question before we go. A lot of your argument seems to be about the social effects phones have on schools, communities, not just on learning. When you think about the legacy of this, how do you hope your students are better prepared for the world as a result of this policy?
I will start with something micro, which is one of the shifts that I've been experiencing in recent years. There are students who get to our high school new as ninth graders and don't know anybody and, might have some social anxiety. And it takes them a while to find their way into groups, to find ways to connect, to get comfortable, to be part of something and feel like they belong. What I was noticing in recent years with phones is that very quickly that student who was in a group setting and struggling could pull out their phone and be interacting with that. And that could radically extend the period of time that it took them to get connected. They didn't learn that skill of how do you find your way into a conversation if you don't know how to do it? How do you make new connections? So one outcome, I hope, is that our kids understand what healthy community looks like, understand how to build it, understand how to forge new connections, that they leave school with that capacity, that they leave school with the capacity to stay with a topic over a period of time, to read a book and actually, really think deeply about something without being interrupted every 30 seconds by a notification. And I guess finally, I hope that they will feel like they know themselves a little bit better. And I think that sometimes the technology actually can interfere with how we know ourselves.
Russell, thank you for being here.
Mike, it is my pleasure.
And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our excellent morning newsletter, Hey DC. And become a neighbor. Head to membership.citycast.fm to join. It's just $10 a month. You get great perks, and you support local journalism, which is more important than ever right now. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.